From Quito, Ecuador, my name is Carla Gonzalez and this is From the South, the daily news brief on Telesur English. We start this new edition right now. Relatives of those murdered by death squads in Peru in the 1990s have been expressing their concern at the pardon granted to former President Alberto Fujimori. The family members called the decision by President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski a betrayal. Fujimori was serving 25 years in prison for 2 massacres carried out under his presidency. Thousands more civilians died during the counter-insurgency campaign he oversaw.
Un dolor muy fuerte. ¿Qué dirá mi hijo?
It's very painful. What will my son say? I've continued for 25 years looking for justice for Amaro.
Hay una traición hacia nosotros.
There's a betrayal against us. I voted for him. Both times, in the first and second rounds, I voted for him. I believed in him. But as I said, this is the second time that I trusted in a president and that they have failed me.
2 days after he was pardoned on medical grounds, the health of former Peruvian President Fujimori suddenly improved. Doctors treating him at the Japanese-Peruvian clinic in Lima said he had been moved out of intensive care and may be allowed home if he continues to get better. Peru's President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski has been accused of granting the pardon as part of a political deal to save himself from impeachment.
The former president has been transferred out of the intensive care unit to an intermediary unit and continued his treatment. Depending on if his evolution continues favorably, his attending doctors will look at when he can leave.
Earlier on Tuesday, Fujimori published a video in which he thanked President Kuczynski.
I have to express my profound gratitude for this difficult step that the President has taken. This commits me, in this new stage of my life, to support his call for reconciliation. Thank you very much, President Kuczynski, for this magnanimous gesture that has brought me comfort.
Our correspondent in Lima, Jaime Herrera, has the latest on what is happening.
Muchas gracias por el pase. En efecto, el día de hoy.
Today, the families of the 9 students and 1 teacher of La Cantuta University, killed during Alberto Fujimori's administration, will announce along with their lawyers the legal strategy they will put in motion to revoke the pardon that President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski granted to the former president. Social, political, and union organizations will also meet in the afternoon to debate what actions to take regarding this humanitarian pardon, as well as organizing a national strike against the current government's decision. Meanwhile, resignations are adding up inside the governing party, Peruanos por el Cambio, as well as in Congress. Yesterday, several public servants from the Ministry of Justice and Humanitarian Rights who are against the pardon of Fujimori, especially the director of the programs in charge of searching for missing people and helping the victims, as well as one of the delegates for the Human Rights Division. It's important to remember that President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski had 19 congressmen from his political party in Congress, although 3, Gina Costa, Vicente Caballos, and Alberto de Balón, have already resigned.
That was Jaime Herrera from Lima. The Brazilian government has declared persona non grata the top Venezuelan diplomat in Brazil. The announcement came 3 days after Venezuela's Constituent Assembly said it will no longer recognize the Brazilian ambassador in Caracas, Rui Pereira, because of Brazil's repeated meddling in Venezuelan domestic affairs. Venezuelan chargé d'affaires, Gerardo Delgado, will have to leave Brazil in the coming days. Honduras Opposition Alliance has presented a legal action to have the results of November's election declared null and void. This after the Electoral Authority declared Juan Orlando Hernández president of the country for a second consecutive term.
Precisamente por la sede The conditions and the reasons to challenge these elections are the amount of irregularities that tainted the election process in Honduras. Experts who analyzed the results of the voting process and the whole world said that the people expressed their will and chose Salvador Nasrallah as their president.
The opposition in Honduras also says it will take to the streets again in the coming days against what it says was fraud in the election.
The Liberal Party talked about a day for planning demonstrations against the government of Juan Orlando Hernández.
We're currently regrouping. We have a meeting with some leaders, and afterwards we will call for a national assembly of all of our delegates in order to rethink the strategies we will use to overthrow the dictatorship.
In the meantime, December 26 was the deadline for challenging the election results. The opposition alliance submitted the required legal complaint to the Supreme Electoral Tribunal.
Three
people are preparing formal challenges, 2 of them from the opposition alliance and another independent individual who is ready to present an annulment. We are also presenting a complaint since our formal challenge from December the 8th was not answered accordingly.
La impugnación del 8 de diciembre no fue contestada.
To analysts, the political situation in Honduras has become increasingly complex, in particular after re-election were allowed without following legal reforms, establishing the constitution, which only allows re-elections through a national constituent assembly.
We're in political and social crisis caused by the elections. We didn't have the reliability of an honest electoral institution. This was a situation we could see coming from the moment the political class refused to implement reforms.
The opposition leadership has announced demonstrations will restart in January and will not stop until the demands of establishing a national constituent assembly are fulfilled.
More than 3 years on, the families of the 43 missing Ayotzinapa students have marched in Mexico City to honor their loved ones. The group of parents headed to the Basilica of Guadalupe for a church service. The 43 students were forcibly disappeared in the state of Guerrero in September of 2014, after they were stopped by the police and army on their way to a demonstration in the capital. The parents expressed their concern at the government's recent security law and demanded a proper investigation into their children's disappearance.
The first thing to do is to lodge a complaint to the Virgin of Guadalupe over what has happened, what the government has done in investigation, and over the suffering of the parents missing, with the doors of justice being closed on them. Also, we will ask for strength so they can continue pursuing their demands. Additionally, we are going to ask the government to be sensitive and to help find 43.
The Virgin of Guadalupe is the Queen of Mexico, and we will ask her to speak to the hearts of those in government, to return our children, because it is not fair that 39 months on, our children have not been returned.
Our correspondent Pablo Perez sent this report from Mexico City.
So yesterday, parents and relatives of the 43 missing students from Ayotzinapa, Guerrero, along with some solidarity organizations, participated in a march to the Basilica de Guadalupe, the most visited Catholic temple in Latin America. They were hoping to join their prayers and participate on the Mass, asking for the Virgin to intercede in their search for their missing kids. They had some incidents with the local Mexico City police as the police tried to keep the parents to reach the church, but finally they got to the church and participated in the Mass, and after that they read a communique asking for the government, the Mexican authorities, for some real conclusions on their investigation of the 43 students case. The parents say that the authorities have left aside some important evidence, such as the participation of the armed force on the events that night and the evidence in the students' cell phones. That is the situation with the authorities, and they also, the parents and organizations, asked for the solidarity of the Mexican people in this, which is the 39th month since the disappearance of the Ayotzinapa students.
That was Pablo Perez from Mexico City. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. The victory of the right-wing candidate Sebastián Piñera in Chile, with almost 55% of the vote, poses a challenge not only to people's rights, but also to the ability of social movements to come together in a common front of resistance.
Social movements in Chile are on alert.
We already faced one Sebastián Piñera government with our demands, and what we got was a complete refusal of any change in the education system, as well as outright repression on the streets.
In fact, 2011 went down in history as the year of a new awakening of the social movements. But during the government of Michelle Bachelet, this seemed to disappear in a flurry of promises and very unclear advances, which disappointed many Chileans.
We expect there to be more clarity from a right-wing government than under a government posing as progressive, but which in reality was no different from the right, apart from the makeup.
In spite of all the criticism of the current government, the truth is that students, workers and sexual diversity leaders, migrants and feminists, among others, are well aware that the right is a threat to the few advances achieved in terms of rights and social reforms.
We will have to be very careful of any attempt of the right to roll back what has been achieved. For this, we will need the citizens, not only the students, but the whole population, to be aware of what they are trying to do.
Stopping abortion on 3 grounds, deepening the business model of pensions, or continuing with education for profit are just some of the threats. That's why less than a month after Piñera's victory, different social sectors are starting to organize.
The government of Piñera gives us a chance to unite around a clear objective of social demands.
The No to Private Pensions movement has announced a congress for January 2018 in which they want all sectors to take part. The idea is also to turn different social demands into legislative proposals coming from the grassroots, because for the first time, the Chilean parliament will have over 20 lawmakers from the broad front who came from the social movements.
The situation is changing radically. The balance between different forces is changing. It's no longer just 2 blocs that share power between them. Now there is a third political force in the country, and that opens new possibilities of generating more radical changes, deeper changes, that have been blocked for years.
The offensive by social movements, they say, will be combined with actions both in Congress and on the streets.
The Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean says that Nicaragua will be the 3rd fastest growing economy in the region in 2018. Our correspondent in Managua went to one of the city's markets to find out why.
With just a few days to go until the end of the year, business is brisk at this popular market in Managua. Traders like Azucena say this is the busy season and they have to take advantage of it.
As traders, we do well when people are doing well because they spend. Sales go up and we get a lot of benefit from that. So we're hoping they keep increasing. Because business was good this Christmas and we're hoping the last days of the year are the same. If the people are all right, then trade is good too.
The Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean is projecting that Nicaragua's economy will grow 5% next year. Other experts also say it will grow, and they say this is because of the good relations the government has developed with all sectors of the economy.
The economy will remain the same this year because of the government policy towards the private sector. Without that, the economy would stagnate.
Ovidio Reyes, president of Nicaragua's central bank, says that in the last 6 years the economy has become stronger, and with the growth in exports this year, expectations are high for 2018.
We have many investment projects to help develop the private sector, and we also have plans to increase our trade with other countries, with new markets in Europe and Asia, which are both very interesting. We also want to improve agricultural and livestock productivity to reach those new markets with quality products.
Nicaragua's National Central Bank authorities have said that 2017 will end with a growth of 4.7 to 5.2% and an inflation rate of 5 to 6%. They also say they agree with the select predictions for 2018 of growth of 5%.
Now for a look back at one of the big stories in 2017. In September, Mexico was devastated by two powerful earthquakes, the first one on the southern coast and 11 days later, close to Mexico City. They caused chaos and destruction, but also solidarity and hope across the country. Let's take a look.
On September 19, 2017, a 7.1 earthquake shook Mexico City. It hit only hours after many people participated in earthquake drills on the anniversary of another devastating quake that killed thousands in 1985. The tremor caused apartment blocks, industrial buildings, and highways to crumble, trapping countless people in the wreckage.
The conditions of the building structures are awful. They're really bad. There's no security. We're trying to establish the best security possible. With the help of engineers and the population, we're doing the best job possible.
At least 21 children and 4 adults were buried at the Enrique Rebsamen School. 12 children were saved after uninterrupted hours of searching by local and federal authorities, along with volunteers.
We found people moving under the school. We're not sure whether it's 2 or 3 children, but they're still alive. We detected that there's body heat in that place, and that means we keep digging.
At least 17,000 people were attended to in 48 shelters, but the earthquake left thousands of people homeless.
When the earthquake hit us, we ran out of the house because it started to fall out piece by piece. So it's very risky to stay inside our home, and that is why we are camping outside. We have no other place to go.
The scale of the destruction from the earthquake overwhelmed the Mexican authorities. Ordinary citizens turned out in their thousands to help in the rescue efforts. Citizens joined brigades all across the capital to remove rubble with their bare hands and provide water, food, and shelter.
It's incredible how the population has helped us. They spend their time helping others. They have donated food, water. Sometimes we fall asleep and we wake up with a blanket. We have everything we need thanks to them.
The brigades included people of all ages, rescue experts, rescue dogs, construction workers, and local residents. They organized themselves in their neighborhoods to provide food and emergency supplies in a park in the Mexican capital as the search for survivors continued.
This is my country, isn't it? As brothers, we have to stick together at the very least. This tragedy is proof of that. As Mexicans, we have a love of our country and a love of our own people.
A signal was used by the brigades, the raised fist, which told volunteers in the area to remain silent so that they could hear people trapped under the buildings, houses, and hospitals. Some rescuers felt they needed more time to keep looking for survivors.
I think we should be more flexible with the rescue protocol time limit. We need to think not only about the people trapped inside buildings, but also in their families, who suffered trying to find their missing relatives.
The international help started to arrive. Brigades from El Salvador, Nicaragua, Ecuador, France, and other countries were sent to Mexico to assist in relief efforts. Venezuela delivered a cargo plane with more than 10 tons of humanitarian aid to earthquake-ravaged Mexico City. A couple of days after this tragic event, Mexican and international artists performed at a free concert in the Zocalo of Mexico City, which brought together 300,000 people with the intention of raising funds to provide assistance to victims and help rebuild devastated areas.
We have to keep supporting, cooperating, donating, whatever. What is little for you, for us is going to be a lot, and we'll be able to rebuild Mexico and help those families that need it.
I want to ask for a big applause today for all the people who gave a hand, for the rescuers, for those who helped in some way, for all our heroes, a strong applause for each one of us.
President Enrique Peña Nieto offered a ceremony to pay tribute to the victims and thank the groups that took part in the rescue efforts.
We have felt the solidarity support of thousands of people, of volunteers who, along with the government organizations, were ready and willing to help, regardless of the hours dedicated to this work and without rest.
The earthquake left 470 people dead, 184,000 households, 175 health facilities, and 16,000 schools damaged. It is estimated that more than $2.5 billion will be needed to pay for reconstruction. More than 2 months later, the efforts to rebuild and make structural evaluation of damaged buildings seem never-ending. Thousands of people in Mexico City were still waiting for their home to be rebuilt as the Mexican government promised.
The government is not doing what it should. They are avoiding their responsibility. Of course, it was nature that affected us, but the government is not providing any real help.
In November, the earthquake victims marched throughout the streets of Mexico City. Thousands of families who were left homeless after the earthquake and were still living in temporary shelters. They decided to keep protesting until their concerns are heard by the government.
Until our houses are reconstructed, until we get a decent home, we will remain here, protesting and closing streets.
This situation is a disgrace for us, but there's also other people who helped us. With that support from the world, we have enough for reconstructions.
Social organizations denounced that the government and political parties think only of the presidential elections of 2018, while the more than 250,000 people affected throughout the country have still not received an answer to their demands for transparency in the use of resources. So again, they raised their fist high, the sign of hope that today is transformed into a sign of the fight of the victims.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Workers have begun evacuating emergency medical cases from Syria's besieged opposition stronghold in eastern Ghouta. 3 children were among the first 4 patients to be evacuated. In total, there are 29 seriously ill people who need immediate medical help. The evacuees suffer from diseases like cancer, kidney infection, hemophilia, among others. After months of deadlock, a deal was agreed late on Tuesday between the Syrian government and a rebel faction to allow the Red Cross to evacuate. And here are some stories that are making headlines around the world.
Thousands are protesting in Morocco after 2 brothers died while digging in an abandoned coal mine in the northwestern city of Jarada. The death sparked a wave of anger amongst people who gathered to protest against their economic marginalization for years. The demonstrators demanded justice and better living conditions in the city.
This region has many resources that other regions of our dear country do not have. Since 1997 and until now, the city has been disrupted. It's been 20 years since the mine was closed, and I'm wondering, aren't we citizens of this country? Aren't we Moroccans? It's been 20 years of exclusion and loss.
The United States has sanctioned 2 North Korean officials over the development of ballistic missiles as Russia and the United States top diplomats held talks on Pyongyang's nuclear program. The U.S. Treasury named the 2 men as Kim Jong-silk and Rip Pyong-chol and said both were key leaders of North Korea's ballistic missile program. North Korea said the move was an act of war and tantamount to a total economic blockade. South Korean prosecutors have sought a 12-year jail term for Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Jae Lee in a corruption case that led to the ouster of the nation's former president Park Geun-hye. The 49-year-old billionaire heir to South Korea's Samsung Group was convicted by the lower court of bribing the country's former president. Besides Lee, who has been in detention since February, 4 former Samsung executives were also charged in the case. Liberian newspapers have reported low turnout in decisive rerun presidential election contested by former 51-year-old international footballer George Weah and 73-year-old Vice President Joseph Boakai.
Thanks Chewikogoya for his immense effort when it comes to conducting the election yesterday. The election was free, fair, and transparent. So there was no way we can say somebody cheated because we were part of the process and we know how the process went on. And we saw how it was conducted. And there was no form of duress. They were not forcing anybody to do anything on their own will. We went there freely and we voted freely.
Like many countries in Latin America, Peru takes very seriously the nativity scenes that characterize the Christmas season. 60 creations from different parts of the country were on display at the 13th National Contest of Nativity Scenes. The winners were artists from Cusco, Ayacucho, and Junín.
Nativity scenes are one of the strongest customs in Peruvian culture. The tradition started in colonial times, brought to Peru by Jesuit priests as an instrument to evangelize the indigenous peoples. Since then, the features of the nativity scenes have changed according to the culture of each region.
Firstly, I respect the Ayacuchan culture of this country and the great masters that know this kind of art. And secondly, the modern aspect is that the work has become more refined. The carving is done with great care, and there's also respect for the culture that was used decades ago for the decoration. This is the work you see. I paint with feathers, not brushes.
Although each nativity scene has its own style, the syncretism between Western indigenous cultures is clear in all of them, along with the feeling of each artisan who makes them.
The birth scene is not only about a child coming into this world, which is what we first understand from it, which is what it makes us feel. We also show it, for example, under the tree of life, because since we are born, we depend on the oxygen that we breathe from trees.
This is a nativity scene which won most votes from audiences because of its uniqueness. It is inspired by a traditional home of the Pajaten community in Oxapamba, and it was made from native materials.
Trying to respect the environment in recreating the costumes of the area. We decided to go and see what we could collect in the countryside. Then, we found corn cobs, because it's a custom there to plant them and then dry them to feed the animals. So we collected some of those, some seeds, some wires, some woods, and we started to put everything together with our imagination.
The 13th edition of the National Nativity Scene Contest, organized by the Cultural, Theatrical and Social Institute, has become famous for the diverse materials and textures used to create the scenes. Clay, wood, stone, textiles, metals and materials which reflect the geographic and cultural diversity of the Andean country.
We've come to the end of this daily news brief. This and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.